Heavenly Father, help us to see despite our eyes. Help us to think outside of our minds. Help us to be more than our lives. For your eyes show us the way, your mind knows the truth, and your being is the life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I have to say that whoever, I was saying this to the chaplain at Lake Prince the other day, he said, I'm just not, I can't believe we're halfway through December. And I said, yeah, the person whoever invented Advent is brilliant. Because this idea that we need this time to prepare for something like this is huge. And you see it in the little aspects of the service that we're even perfecting those as we get there. You know, like and we're taking baby steps, and it's great. There is this period that for something as immense as Christmas, we need the whole month. A lot of time, too, we take the whole month to celebrate the coming of Christmas. Then when it's gone, though, it goes so fast. The church had originally had this notion of Advent for a month, and then 12 days of real celebration continuing. So we've made it to the second week of Advent. Last week we talked about hope. And I paired hope with seeking, and we looked at ourselves in the place of the wise men. We asked, what are they seeking? I asked you, what are you seeking? And how that's all wrapped around this notion of hope, how hope continues us on its way, sparks the initial journey, etc. This time, and that time I took a line from Go Tell It on the Mountain. When I was a seeker, I sought both night and day. This week, I'm going to take two stanzas, the two that are missing from the poem song that we just sang. He wrote, actually, I'm going to read those two, but then take the last two. But when that song was written, or that poem was written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in the middle of the Civil War. And so that notion, and when he bows his head and says there is no peace on earth, he said there is literally cannons and strife and division going on. But the two verses that are typically cut go like this. And then from each black accursed mouth a cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. So the sound of those cannons going off are those things that makes him bow his head. He says that it was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I think those two stanzas are usually taken out because they put it too much in the context of that time. Because this is a song that appeals to all time. This notion of peace in amongst the fact that there's turmoil is a huge part of what we come to talk about when we talk about peace. When I was at Gordonsville, it was the 150-year anniversary of the Civil War, and so that was a big deal in that part of the state. And they asked our church, because it was one of the churches that had been around then, to host a Civil War era Christmas service. And that was to be followed by a period ball, which was neat. The girls dressed up in these little period dresses, and they had a period Santa Claus, which was kind of a neat thing because Santa was different in that time as he is now. It was a really neat thing. But I remember I was supposed to get myself in the character of the Civil War and then preach on peace. And it was a challenge. And it's the same challenge that is there today. Preaching on peace in a world where there is such division and strife. So the verses that I want to draw from for today's lesson to pair with the gospel are these. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. I chose this because I think it's this edge that we stand on. when it comes to peace. We have to acknowledge the fact that we can open our eyes to the world and see a world that's very much not at peace. And then something. For him, it was the bells tolling. And he goes in the first couple stanzas to talk about the history of those bells tolling. And he can look back to a time when there was peace. And he can look back to a time, he can look back to a story of Christ. And he can find peace. But we stand on that edge. Our faith is tested because we can open our eyes and we see a world that's very much struggling with peace. Both on a global scale, a macro level where you have countries, but then on a country level where we see the division that we have between right and left and this group and that group and whatnot. But also on a smaller interpersonal level. Snow is falling and it looks so peaceful, but it's causing a lot of troubles for us as a church, right? It's really inconvenient. And how can we be at peace when there's so much that we now have to do to just make things work? Peace evades us. It just does. It evades us. But yet here is our New Testament lesson. And it's a famous piece. It is the message of the angels to the shepherds. Suddenly, this is Luke 2, verses 13 and 14. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those of whom his favor rests." The word of the Lord. So we have angels filling the sky with wonder and magnificence and light and just... I think you can close your eyes and picture that scene better than any representation that's ever been drawn of it. Proclaiming the birth of the Prince of Peace. But yet peace evades us. The other thing I've always thought was a little bit ironic is that this time in the history of the world is the beginning of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which means that they had finally stomped everybody else into submission, and so that there was some peace, including themselves, right? Augustus had come to the throne, and the Bible's really important, puts that in there. The time of Caesar Augustus, Pax Romana. The Prince of Peace is born. So there may just be a little bit more to peace than what immediately comes to mind. Our Old Testament lesson is Isaiah 11, 1 through 9. This is a traditional reading for this Sunday in Advent. I think you'll see why. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will lie down with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the world will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we have the angels singing it, Prince of Peace. And now we have the prophets prophesying it. This world world-changing peace, where you got animals finally getting along, and kids playing with snakes. With no sense of danger. Now, I think that my youngest daughter driving in a little car down the lane and stopping every little bit so Daddy can catch up while she's by herself going to get the mail, but I'm with her, and stopping, waiting for me, and then taking off, and this copperhead coming out from under the car, and me going, go, 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 and me being like, ah. Kids playing with those things, no sense of danger. Peace. I think of Ghostbusters, right? Like there's that point in Ghostbusters where Peter Venkman Bill Murray is talking about the end of the world. He's trying to explain to the politicians that this is going down. He's like, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Dogs and cats living together. Is that the peace we await? And so we must wait until the world ends again. We wait for the gatekeeper and the hounds of hell and whatnot and the State Puff Marshmallow Man coming, the end of the world Armageddon scene, to finally find some peace. If you look through the word peace in the Gospel of Luke, right? Because we want to get at what the angels have in mind here, since they're the ones that proclaim this peace. And Luke's the one writing it. So how does Luke use that word the rest of the time? The first time is a little bit earlier, the Song of Simeon. And this is an interesting one. This is Luke 1, 76 through 79. And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of salvation to his people by the forgiveness of their sins, by the tender mercy of God. The dawn from on high will break upon us to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. So Jesus is leading us into this way of peace. I think this is the very guidance that we need, right? We need a little guidance into the way of peace. Peace is hard. But what is it? What is peace? We know that it evades us. We know that it's hard. But how do you define this idea of peace? Because in this same gospel, the same Luke writer, talking about the same exact person, has him saying, do you think I came to bring peace? Not peace, but a sword and division. This is what Christ says he will bring. The Prince of Peace, during the Pax Romana, is leading us into a way of peace that includes a sword and division. But he also uses the same word when he talks about a greeting. And he sees people and he says, peace be upon you. He sees peace when he's healed someone. May you go then in peace. That happens a couple of times. He comes to a house, or he tells his disciples to go to houses and enter and say, may peace come to this house. And when he enters into Jerusalem, he sheds a tear and he says this. I'll give you the full quote. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, if you, even you, had known on this day, that would bring you peace. If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace. But now it's hidden from your eyes. If only you had known. What is this peace that's hidden from our eyes? And why is it hidden? And why does Isaiah talk about the idea that the judge is going to be blinded and deaf when he judges? Does that mean it's not real? Right? That peace isn't real? that it's something that we just make up and say, well, the world's going, but I am at peace. I'm going to put on my blinders. I'm not going to focus on all that kind of stuff. I'm going to sing my little song. Peace will begin with me. Or you just hang out on that bridge in Busch Gardens, where if you've been to Busch Gardens during Christmas Town, there's that bridge where the kids are singing, "Let there be peace on earth," and you look out on the peace on earth over the river, and it's the most beautiful spot. So you can just go to your little happy place. I'm there. Nope. I talked about how hope is fleeting, and our cynical world has much to say about hope. Imagine peace in the same way. Like, even after I preached on hope last week, one of the first things I heard in the beginning of the week was this: hope is what you cling to when reality has grown unbearable. It was on that Saturday Night Live Christmas special or whatever, and John Malkovich is reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" to the kids, and he's scaring them to death. And I was like, wow. Hope is what you cling to when reality has grown unbearable. Can you see someone saying, that same cynic saying, that peace is what you imagine when the world has gone unbearable? They might say that peace is an impossibility, that peace will never come except in speeches, at beauty contests, when the Miss America gets up and says, well, I would like to pray for world peace, and my reign will focus on that. Peace only exists in our pinings and in our prayers, but never in reality. That's the voice of the cynic. It's somewhere always in our head. In despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. And those other bells that he hears. But wait, there is. But wait, there is some kind of peace. Does that mean peace is just something that we can believe in to make ourselves feel better? Like, imagine some bells. Like the fantasy of those bells. The magic of that bridge. It's hard for me to talk this way and talk cynically about it, because I'm very much a romantic and I'm an idealist, and I do believe in peace. But you can imagine those cynical folks saying those kinds of things. You can imagine wearing peace-colored glasses, pretending that everything is okay when it's not. At the time of the plague in 1348 in Florence, right before the Renaissance, Boccaccio writes this thing about it, and he talks about what happens when the plague goes down. And in Florence at that time, 2/3 of the population dies. 2/3, more than half. And he says that those people that were surviving, that families were breaking apart, and parents were just leaving their kids in the street, that families, nobody was caring for each other. Part of Boccaccio's point is that in Florence, which is supposed to be the Christian paragon of Europe, when the chips were down, loving your neighbor fell apart. He says that there were people that walked around, because the smell was so bad, they walked around with roses to their nose, so they didn't have to smell them. This is that peace-colored glasses, right? That's what Patrick Henry was talking about in that famous speech that I put in the meditation in the bulletin. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace. Which of course is biblical as well. Jeremiah uses that exact same quote, men may cry peace, peace, when there is no peace, twice. It does us no good to pretend that that conflict doesn't exist. So what is Christ getting at? What are we to make of all of these promises of peace? And what is peace anyway? Because we face a world like this. Listen to this. I read more of this. I read a full quote to this session the other night, but I want you to hear this description of the world. It is as though all of the powers of the world had conspired together against peace. Money, business, the lust for power, and indeed even love for the fatherland have been pressed into the service of hate. Hate of nations, hate of people against their own countrymen. It is already flaring up here and there. What are the events in the Far East and in South America but a proof that all human ties are dissolving to nothing? That there is no fear of anything where the passion of hate is nourished and breaks out. Events are coming to a head more terribly than before. Millions hungry, people with cruelly deferred and unfulfilled wishes, desperate men who have nothing to lose but their lives and will lose nothing in losing them. Humiliated and degraded nations who cannot get over their shame. Political extreme against political extreme. Fanatic against fanatic. Idol against idol. And behind it, all a world which bristles with weapons as never before. A world which feverishly arms to guarantee peace through arming. Hear that Pax Romana there. A world whose idol has become the word security. A world without sacrifice, full of mistrust and suspicion, because past fears are still with it. A humanity which trembles at itself, a humanity which is not sure of itself and is ready at any time to lay violent hands on itself. How can one close one's eye to the fact that the demons themselves have taken over the rule of the world, and that it is the powers of darkness who have here made an awful conspiracy and could break out at any moment? How could one think that these demons could be driven out, those powers annihilated, with a bit of education and international understanding, or with a bit of goodwill? That was written in 1932 in Germany. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He goes on to say that the world lives on the edge of death and new life. And Christ offers that edge. And faithfully standing on that edge. And says that there is peace in that moment. And if there's peace in that moment, there's peace in all the other ones that we could ever hope to have ourselves in. I saw a video yesterday on Facebook where there was a dude in a kayak. And there was a fin pretty close, but it wasn't real big. And as it got closer, it got bigger. There was a point at which where it was about 10 feet away from him, where it was bigger than he and the kayak together. It looks like a shark. You can tell the person thinks it's a shark, but he hasn't moved. He is absolutely at peace. And if he were to move, things might go differently for him. Right? But he holds himself together somehow. Lord knows what's going on in his pants. But he is remaining outwardly calm as much as possible. Apologize for that. As it gets closer, it crests by him. The blowhole opens. It blows a little shot of water into the air and then submerges right down beside him. I cannot imagine what that person would be feeling like. But he doesn't move. He's absolutely at peace with that happening. The question is, I think always with peace, is not that can we ignore those things, that we can pretend that they don't exist, that we can pretend that, none of that. But to be in touch with the reality that they do exist and still have the peace that passes all understanding. To me, that's what living on that edge of peace is about. And any piece of peace that isn't on that edge weakens us. It makes us think that we are strong enough to overcome it. It makes us think that we are somehow in control. But we're not. And that being able to stand in the midst of all of that going on, not ignoring it, but focusing it and still being at peace. I believe that that in itself is the peace that Christ offered. And it's the peace that we should hope to cling to. And any other peace that's bought more cheaply than the cross is fleeting and therefore not sustainable. May we, during this season of year and our lives as they move forward, be able to take the things as they come and still find peace in the battle, in the midst of the storm, in the midst of this world. For Christ offers that. In his name